This is a nice, slow yin style yoga practice. We stay in the poses for quite some time. And today we'll be working on shoulders and lengthening of the side body. I love to swim, and in my swim practice, I do find that my shoulders, pec major and minor, and my neck get really tight sometimes. This practice is really a wonderful way to work on that area. Come to your mat in all fours position, and we'll be starting in a variation on child's pose. So as we begin, child's pose, as you know, has your knees really wide apart and your inner toes toward each other. This time we might want to use a block or a blanket or something for our head because we'll be twisting just slightly in this child's pose, and we'll be here for a little bit. Thread one arm under as you reach the other arm forward. And draw your pelvis back. Just help us open up this upper chest area. So as you weave one arm under, as you have the other arm straight and forward, you draw the pelvis back. Just having a little pillow for your head so that you can hang out here for a bit. Not hang out, but perform the pose. And as you do, just see how you can refine before just settling in. So there's not much fidgeting around once you find that. And just by threading one arm under, you start to bring your breath to expand one side a little bit more than the other. And again, just as if we're trying to create gills here through our lower ribs, you breathe in and just kind of imagine those ribs expanding so fully. Maybe you can inch your fingers forward on the hand that's reaching toward the top of your yoga mat. Keep on drawing the pelvis back. Now, if your knees are feeling like this is not working for them, just find a towel or a washcloth or something to put right behind your knees so that you can open up the knee joint really nicely. And just bring some fullness to that area of the lungs. Just expanding so fully. Soften your facial muscles. Take 3 more breaths here in this pose. 2 more. One more. And release out of the pose. Come to all fours position. And in all fours position, just step your hands just a little, maybe one step forward so that you can come to downward facing dog or puppy dog pose, whichever works for you. And come to tiptoes in your pose. Lean your pelvis over to one side. Lean your pelvis to the opposite side. And you'll probably notice just by moving your pelvis from side to side, there's one side that's a lot more expansive than the other. So let's come down to all fours position and do the same thing. Child's pose with a slight bit of a twist as you thread the arm underneath your armpit of the opposite arm and bring your pelvis back. See now, as you press the back of the hand that's threaded, press it pretty firmly. So this is not a static pose. It certainly looks it, but you are actually doing a lot of action with the arms. Even with the spread fingers, you're pressing into the earth, but especially with the breath, you're kind of coaxing it to expand through the side body. And sometimes when you thread your hand underneath the armpit and just kind of notice the hand with the palm facing up, sometimes the thumb is way far away from the mat. And see if you can draw your thumb a little bit closer to the mat. So you've got a nice rotation of the forearm there. Let your head rest so that the neck muscles release, so that you can just take your energy and your focus into the side body, into the area of the shoulders. And once again, be careful with your knees. If your knees don't like this, please support that by placing something behind your knees. Keep that support. As you inch your hand that's reaching toward the front of the mat a little bit more, and you press the fingernails of the hand that is threaded. Breathe in and expand through the side body. And most people just kind of let their belly just kind of hang here. So rather than that, see if you can draw from the pubic bone to the navel back to the spine. And you'll see just by doing that subtle action, you'll get so much more fullness, or you should be able to see kind of this expansion of the side body even more. 3 more breaths here in this side. 2 more. And 1 more. And lift yourself up to come to downward facing dog again, just to check it out. And if downward dog doesn't work for you, just puppy dog will. Just a way to check in to find with the knees slightly bent and the sit bones lifted, as the pelvis moves very slowly side to side. Just once again, check in to find the differences here. Maybe find the similarities now that you've done both sides. The Yin Yoga practice just allows us to focus on different parts of the body, and by staying into the pose quite a bit longer, we can really draw more fullness there and build on to all the teachings, all the poses that we've worked on to see how we can create more fullness. Come back to all fours position. And in all fours position, just pause for a moment. I'll just explain a little bit. First, we'll come to our belly with our palms facing down and roll to one side with one arm still extending out. So that looks like you're on your belly, palms are facing down. You roll to one side, so one arm is still extending out straight. Your you're on, say, the right shoulder and the right hip, or vice, or the left, whatever is working for you. I use the opposite arm as kind of a kickstand to just kind of allow myself to just settle in here. With one hand in front, just opening you up nicely. With the other hand in the back, you press the palm down. Now, there you can do any variation you wish that makes you feel slightly more comfortable. Some people like using a little pillow here for their head because they feel like it's a slight strain on the neck. So if you want to elevate your head, by all means do that. And as you press the palm down, and just kind of open up more. Some of you got more freedom in your upper shoulder, and you can put your hand behind your back if you wish. But it's we're mostly working on the shoulder that's down. But just allow yourself to work a little bit more fully here, pressing from the fingertip tops, pulling in from those fingertips all the way to the shoulder. Just working to open up that upper chest area a little bit more. And if you're feeling like this is becoming a little bit too much on that arm, then of course you want to back off and maybe even bend the elbow slightly or take the hand a little bit closer to your pelvis. If you can keep it in that T position that we started with, that might be optimal, but for some of us, that just doesn't work for the shoulder. So stay here for 3 more breaths. And now come out of the pose to lie on your back. Before going to the other side, let's just see if you can tell as you lie on your back with your knees bent. See if you can tell that one side is open a little bit more than the other by pressing your elbows down, lifting your heart up in Setubandha Sarvagasana. Can you notice how that one side that you are really working just feels so much fuller than the other? That one pose teaches you how to go deeper into another pose that's just completely different. Now that you've checked that out, come back down, lie on your belly, go in that T position with the palms facing down again, and turn to the opposite side. So as you press your hands down, roll over and just roll over in a way with possibly the head supported in a way that you feel like you can support yourself to stay there for a few breaths. And this Yin Yoga practice really takes a little bit of patience with yourself just to find what works for you on one side compared to the other. And as you just pause there, just come to the breath. Do all the actions, with the hand that we were doing before, which is to use one hand as a kickstand if you wish, or that hand can be behind your back or at your pelvis to open the opposite shoulder. As you press down through the fingertips, draw from the fingertips back to the heart to see about opening the heart a little bit more and just notice on this side, like how's this side compared to the other? You feel like your elbows trying to press so fully. If so, you want to keep the work of the shoulder, the head of the arm bone, drawing back. Maybe you can even inch your fingers out just a little bit more, create more distance there. And we'll stay here for 3 more breaths. And you can slowly come out of the pose. Once again, to lie on your back. And sometimes one side of the ribs doesn't feel quite as open as the other side. As you lie on your back, just check it out to see if you can balance out the actions by pressing your elbows down, lifting your chest up, press your feet down, and pull your feet in toward your heart. And see if you can notice a difference now, more fullness in the upper chest in this pose that's completely different than the poses we were doing. Can you tell how your back bend is just a little bit fuller and brighter? And release down. And we'll do one more pose that's slightly similar to open up this upper chest area. So take either blocks or a blanket. I prefer the blocks actually. I'm going to take the blocks wider apart than the blanket is, than the mat is, and at an angle. So as I spread my wings, as I take my hands down, I'm going to work the forearms down to the blocks. And we'll be going into a puppy dog pose, meaning the pelvis is slightly over the knees and slightly behind the knees, but it's not full child's pose. And I might suggest that your head would be happier if it had a little pillow. Now, this is not, I've got the blocks on their middle height. You might prefer the blocks on their lowest height. Let your hands be free, have the forearms supported, and as you press your forehead down to the mat, or if you've got a little towel or blanket for your head, do that. And again, you can go back to child's pose, but you'll find that that's a slightly different variation here. If you stay in this puppy dog pose with the pelvis lifted and slightly behind your knees, you'll notice that there's a lot of influence here on the upper chest area. And that, just imagine again that we're trying to create like this gill-like action of the side ribs. So as you draw your breath in and out, you're pressing your forearms to the blocks, and that's helping you to lift your shoulders. And as you lift your shoulders, you're getting a nice influence there on your pec major and minor. See if you can soften your jaw, but stay attentive to your breath. So the arms are actively pressing into the blocks. The shoulders are actively lifting up. And 3 more breaths here in this pose. These yin yoga practices, yoga postures, just allow you to go deep into some areas that you kind of thought you knew what was going on. But once you stick in these poses for a while, you find out so much more information. And as you're ready to come out of the pose, lie on your back. And as you lie on your back, just pause here for a moment. Lie on your back and take your arms up over your head. Pause there. Now move both your hands and your feet to the right side. So as you move your hands and your feet to the right side, those gills that we've been creating, you've really expanded. With the hands and the feet on one side, the side body expands so fully. See if you can expand your breath even more from the armpit all the way to the hip point. Let your breath just create a little bit more space between the ribs. Soften your facial muscles, but keep your hands relatively active, especially the hand that is spreading, the wrist that you're holding. Keep that very engaged, and you'll see that affects the outside shoulder nicely. Walk your feet and your hands a little bit more now that you've been in the pose for a while, just a wee bit more to the side to get this expansion. And slowly release your hands and just pause here for a moment with your arms down to your side and your palms facing up. Just to allow your feet to just kind of draw to the side. And all this work that we're doing in these Yin Yoga poses, it just allows the parasympathetic nervous system to just to check in, to allow the stress to just kind of slacken so that, again, your neuromuscular system can react, can create more freedom. The breath has more fullness. The blood flows so much more freely. Take your arms up over your head again. Hold on to the wrist of the opposite hand as you walk your feet in your hands over, so you're in this crescent shape. So again, the limbs are not passive. You're not checking out here. Rather, you're really checking into the side ribs. But what enables you to enhance that even more is an engagement of your limbs. And of course, in yoga, the way we check that engagement is through the spread of the toes, the spread of the fingers, to get more tone in the muscles of the legs and the arms. Walk your feet and your hands just a little bit deeper in your side stretch. And maybe you're feeling like you could go a little bit deeper on this side than the opposite side. That information just really helps you build, helps you grow, helps you mature in your yoga practice. Just knowing what sides, what the idiosyncratic aspects of each side is for you allows you to really customize your practice. And now slowly take yourself back and just pause here for a moment with your arms to your sides, with your legs feeling this kind of freedom. And breathe into the side body so that you get this nice fullness of the chest. Bend both knees to plant your feet and roll over to your side. We'll be lifting up just for a short time. Now that we've got all this length here in the side body, I've got blocks to support my knees because, again, we'll be here for a little bit. As you press your feet very firmly and get the spine to be nice and long. As the feet press in toward each other, you can have support if you wish under the knees, but keep the feet very active and draw forward just slightly. So often in this pose, we start rounding at some point when we come forward. Try not to do that. Try to keep a nice elongated spine, no rounding here. Just allow yourself to soften slightly forward. And if you feel like coming forward is really not possible for you without any elevation, find a little elevation for your pelvis so that you're not rounding your low back. And you do have a little bit more freedom to come forward. If you still can't find that freedom, then take your feet just slightly farther away from your pelvis as you draw forward. We did all that work to open the shoulders, and sometimes when we come forward, the shoulders just want to collapse in toward each other. But see if you can keep all the work, the actions that we were just working on in play here so that the heads of the arm bones draw back and your shoulder blades hug in. And you just continue to soften. You just take your awareness to your breath. You come forward just a little bit more. And you start to see that even though we were working on this lung area, shoulder area, and the liver, that even this pose, which most people perceive as quite a hip opener, this pose seems a little bit more accessible just through the upper body work that we did. Now inhale and lift yourself up. Let's come to the similar pose as you lie down. Pull your knees in toward each other. Lie back on your back again with your feet together. And those of you that have got, you know that you've got really open hips. If you want to take a block right between your feet to keep a nice engagement, that's fine. And those of you that have got knee issues, you may want to support the knees with blocks under them. Let's come to just open the chest once again in the supine pose with your feet together. Have your elbows pressing down. And open your heart really nicely with your palms facing one another. Keep this nice openness of the upper chest, a nice softness to the facial muscles. We've been doing so much to open the upper chest to get this delivery of nice length to the side body. Keep your awareness there so that we can use that for a twist. So let your arms just go free with your palms facing up. Draw your knees in toward each other and step your feet hip distance apart. If your blocks are close by, just take them to the side for now. And with your feet hip distance apart, lift your feet up off the earth and hug your inner knees in toward each other. Now your feet can come together. Your inner big toes can touch. To engage your abdominal muscles to really protect your spine before we do this, just point your toes and drop your toes a little bit closer to the earth. And as you do, you'll feel a nice engagement of the low belly area to support your lumbar spine. Just tap the earth slightly and inhale. Lift your toes up and come toward parallel shin bones. You're still hugging the inner knees in toward each other. Now, with the toes still pointed, just draw the toes down toward the earth, and you do this little tap on the earth. And the slower you go, the more that really helps you develop the core in this low belly area. Inhale, lift your feet up and pause here with your shin bones parallel. Exhale. Notice how the legs really have to work here as you're hugging them in. As you tap down, slower you go, the more this refines that area. Inhale, take your shin bones parallel. Exhale, tap down. Inhale, take your shin bones parallel. Exhale, tap down. Now press your feet down once again. So with the feet pressing down, take them in toward each other to come back to the Baddha Konasana. Press your feet very firmly, and the more firmly you can press your feet, the more you'll feel the inner thigh muscles engage. Take your elbows down alongside your ribs. And let's see all the work that we did to open the chest as you lift your pelvis up. You keep that engagement of the feet, which allows you to protect the low back as you lift your pelvis up and you open your chest really nicely. So you've got really strong action in the legs, nice lift of the heart. And as you take your pelvis back down, pelvis lands first, not the low back, and you draw your knees in to touch one another. Lift your feet up again, take your hands in this T position, and just draw over to one side. Now, if you can, draw all the way over, that's fine. If you're feeling like, oh, the engagement we did certainly helps my low back, but maybe I want to back off just slightly, then feel free to just kind of customize the twist for you. If your knees are all the way over on one side, just see about moving your head to gaze at the opposite side and pause here. So you get this nice spinal twisting action after we've prepared for this twist by really lengthening the side body, by engaging the core. Keep your legs active, even in what appears to be a very relaxed form of the pose. Now, especially the leg that's closest to the earth, you want to pull that into the lifted leg or the higher leg. And with that pulling in action, lift your legs back up to come back to the center position. To engage the core again, point your toes, lift your shin bones parallel to the mat, and tap your toes all the way down very slowly. Just tap down. You need to find what that core engagement really means before doing the twist so that you can keep that as you take your knees over to the opposite side. Just very slowly roll so that you give your glutes a nice massage as you pass over to the side. And you pause. And as we did in the other postures where we held them for quite a while, you start to notice in your twist how one side is so different than the other. Try to understand those differences for yourself. That's what really takes you into the level of like a master yoga student. If you know your body so well that you can really customize the practice to enhance that understanding, to be able to really draw your attention to those areas in your body that you know are slightly more contracted than others. In the same way that we did before, lift up from your bottom leg. So that's really working. The bottom leg is working. It's almost like it's carrying the top leg to lift up. That engages your core muscles nicely. And once again, release your feet to the earth. Take your elbows right alongside you. Press your feet with your feet hip distance apart now. Lift your chest one more time and pause here. And hopefully you notice how much more accessible this back bending experience is after doing so much focus on the shoulders, the side body. And now slowly take your pelvis down, release your hands down, and let's pause in Shavasana. Enjoy your rest in Shavasana. And thank you so much for joining me in the practice today. Namaste.